Thanks, everyone. It's great to be back, even though it's remote. I'm actually sitting here at the Microsoft office in my home state of New Jersey. Again, I was going to do a quick introduction of myself and then jump into the content, which is sort of like a case study. I'm actually bringing some real world experience to talk about here today. But, back to the introduction, I graduated CATS in 1996, dual degree program. Back then, I think the MIS program, we were one of 12 students. I say kids because I'm so much older now than I was back then. I know that program's really flourished, gotten a lot bigger. For me personally, I went to Rutgers undergrad and I went straight out. That's why also I probably made reference to kid, because I was the third youngest kid in my, or third youngest student in my MBA program of over 200. I didn't come to CATS with a lot of work experience, but didn't let that stop me. I learned a great deal, and obviously I use everything I've learned on a daily basis. Here I am over, I don't know how many years, almost 25 years later, still going strong. I'd like to thank some of the folks that I've worked with at CATS over the years. Neil and Sarang are on the call. They're alumni of CATS as well. I've helped mentor them over the years. I still try to stay in contact with CATS where I can. Happy to help any way I can. So again, I graduated in 96. I actually had Dr. Saaty. I was in his, there was a decision making class. I forgot the name of it, but we learned his analytical hierarchy process. We learned about his analytical networking process. I don't know if you heard what I said earlier. When we did a project, he said that he was going to use our team's example in one of his publications. I don't know if that really happened because I still can't find it, or it wasn't cited. He was a great guy. I learned so much from him, and he was very, I don't know if everyone knows him, very nice and kind professor, and was very easy to learn from. Quick background on my professional experience. I started at Microsoft in 2007, and then I've had several roles at Microsoft between consulting and tech sales. Immediately from CATS, I was doing a lot of IT consulting with Deloitte, with CSC, as Mike introduced. I got to Microsoft as a consultant. Then I got kind of interested in sales, and I've been on the tech side of sales since 2010. In that span also, I took a short break from Microsoft, went to Tableau software. Most of you probably know who Tableau is. They got purchased by Salesforce a few years ago. After about a year in Tableau, I decided to come back to Microsoft, which is where I am today. Right now, I'm in healthcare, and my customer, who I covered, I've been covering them for over 7 years. They're one of the largest software providers in healthcare. Additionally, I've been active, as the intro said, in HIMSS, which is a healthcare IT group, the world's largest. They're having their huge global conferences wrapping up today in Orlando with over 25,000 people. And I've been on the board of HIMSS in New Jersey. So that's a little bit about me. I'd like to, when I got the agenda for today, I was asked to talk about making decisions in the business world and some of the criteria and how things are done. So I started to think about, what did I want to talk about? I don't want to do like an intro on Microsoft. I don't want to keep it very high level. I'm actually bringing a real world problem that I'm working with my customer, this week. I'm going to try to keep the names to protect the guilty or innocent, but I'm going to give you a quick background on what the situation is, and then kind of make it almost like a case study for us of, this is a real world, large scale company and how they're making decisions. And, I'll give the punchline at the end. Your decision's not going well, but let me just go into the details a bit. Again, my customer makes software for the healthcare industry, and they have several products out there, software products for healthcare. They want to integrate chat into their products, right? We all know chat, whether we're here today on Zoom, you're using Teams, which is the Microsoft platform. So they wanted to integrate a chat into their software. And at first they told me, look, we want to integrate chat. We want to integrate Teams. I go, why? They're like, well, we just want to do it because it will give us a competitive differentiation. It will make us unique. None of our competitors have it. But I go, yeah, I get that. But why? What are you trying to accomplish by this? And, after thinking about it a while, they didn't have that immediate answer to them. They just said, chat looks cool. We're going to throw it into our software because our competitors aren't doing it. And then, I kind of challenged them and said, well, let's figure out why you want to do this. And after thinking about it for a few weeks, they said, let's do it because we want the practitioners who use our software to be able to collaborate with each other. Okay, that makes sense. That's why you would use chat. But then I came back, especially being the Microsoft person I am, and said, look, Teams is not the only answer we have here. We also have a cloud service called Azure Communication Services that's more robust, and you could do more and build a broader foundation for collaboration than just throwing Teams on, next to your product. And I'm sure we all know what Teams is. I apologize if I'm oversimplifying this, but there's this method in Teams called deep linking, where all you're really doing is taking a website URL, throwing it into an application, and voila, you have integration with Teams. But all you're really doing is just taking a website and, in a sense, building almost an iframe just to integrate it. You're not doing a lot of deep functional integration. But they wanted to do it that way because what was their criteria? Their criteria, they told me, is we want to do this as quickly as possible, right? So they chose the method that looked the easiest, but they didn't think it through. They didn't architect it. They didn't think through their use cases. They said, hey, look, all we need to do is take this website URL, put it in our application. Presto, we have that competitive, unique differentiation. We have Teams, right? So they started down this path, and I actually said, look, let's really think about this long. Let's really take a deep thought into this. Like we don't have time for that. All right, you're the customer. Let's move forward. So they start working on this, and after heading down the path and working on some technical details, they wanted to do some more fancy stuff. They wanted to do multiple sessions and et cetera. And then they're like, so how do we do multiple sessions? I'm like, yeah, you can't do it with Teams. It doesn't support it right now, but it's on the product roadmap. So maybe 6 to 12 months from now, you'll be able to do it. And they said, oh, okay. So what do we do? So our product teams came back and said, well, you need to write a whole bunch of code called, we're going to have to develop your own middleware to take care of those sessions and stuff. And, the customer just wasn't too happy about that. And that's where we are now. Like, this is, again, a real world example of the customer just like, we're going to find the cheapest, easiest way possible. We're just thinking about competitive differentiation to have a quote unquote feature in our product. And then when they really took the time to think it through after they made the decision, they realized that it really can't be supported the way they wanted to. So, that's what I wanted to talk about. Like, how are these decisions made? Where did they go wrong? What can we learn from this, really? And, it's funny because I kind of gave away the answer, right? They made the decision and then figured out how to use it. And, what I was the lesson here to talk with everyone here today is, what did we learn about that, right? They chose apparently the easiest way to do something. They didn't analyze the use case or the purpose. This is very, very important, I think, when we're doing IT decision making. And I don't know the scope of all the decisions you're trying to make or just trying to make in this hackathon. But again, this is a real world example with a large company didn't think enough about what use case they were trying to solve for. How would your customers, how would your users be better off to use something? And then going ahead and designing that. They did the design first, right? They didn't take the time to validate. They didn't take the time to architect. They were just running at 1,000 miles an hour. And what's interesting to me is this sounds so obvious, right? And when I was in CATS 20 whatever years ago, we kind of learned that. And here I am here in March 2022, way after I was in school in the 1990s, living this every day. This is a problem that I'm working on this week. So the lesson here really is really understand the use case that you're trying to solve for, really understand the business requirements, understand all that stuff before you get to the technology, right? So, in this case, my customer didn't understand really the scope, what they were trying to solve for, what the decision, they had the wrong decision criteria, right? And I came up with a few questions that you might want to use to help prevent this from happening in the future, right? What is the business benefit of this, right? If they would have figured out what the business benefit of collaboration is, they possibly could have designed the solution or understood the solution a little bit better to now paint themselves in a corner that now they can't get out of, right? What can you do now, or what can't you do now that you can do with this solution, right? Just saying you're going to slam teams or slam a functionality into software, that doesn't necessarily give you extra capabilities or give you important capabilities, right? Because even once you have that capability, what is that worth? Is anyone going to use it? And in fact, once this customer decided to say, hey, look, we want to do practitioner collaboration, they turn to me and goes, hey, Microsoft, hey, Jaimie, do you think this is worthwhile? And we need to know from our customers what you want to do, right? I'm not here to make the decision and then validate it for you. So again, a very, very quick decision process, not using the right criteria. And again, I can't emphasize enough, this really is happening. I'm almost, surprised that big companies are thinking like this. So as you guys are making your decisions, whether it's to a hackathon or anything else, you really want to take the time to really understand the business use cases, the business benefits, before you even think of anything that's implemented, right? And this happens, quite often, that we think a lot of time in terms of technologies. We decide the solutions we want to build. We understand the resources that it takes to build those solutions, but we don't understand the question we're solving, right? And we actually, I think, a lot of times work in this context backwards, right? We see either I want to build an app to do something, right? Well, why? What do you want to do? Right? Before we think about building an app, we should start thinking about what is it we want to solve, and is the app the right way of solving the problem, right? But a lot of times we have the thinking backwards. We start with the resources we have, with a solution we want to build, but really don't focus enough on the problem. I heard recently a nice little saying, fall in love with the problem, don't fall in love with the solution. And I think when you start thinking in terms of that, you start thinking differently, and it's a more effective way of solving these problems. So any questions so far? Anything interesting percolating? No, quiet group. So yeah, like I said, in summary of this use case or this business case, I think they could have used a lot more expert validation. Sorry.
Jaimie, we did have a question.
Oh, sure. Go for it.
So this is Sierra, the VA student in the CATS program. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Okay?
I hear you fine.
Perfect. Excellent. So my question for you is, how did you define the client's problem now that you know where they are today?
That's a great question. How do you define the problem? And it's almost an iterative approach that, we didn't find, let me say it this way. I don't think we found the problem deliberately. Like once they decided that, hey, we're going to move forward with this technology, then it became an iterative process and said, okay, now that you've decided on this technology, what do you want to do with it? Well, let's think clinician collaboration. Okay, what does that really mean? And then, through that iterative process, after they've already made the decision, they said, okay, now I understand how we can use this. But again, it was a solution looking for a problem. And I think to answer your question in a very direct sense, you might be able to get to a solution, the problem some way, but then you have to validate, is that problem even worthwhile solving? And that's when they came back to me and said, hey, we think this is going to be great for clinician collaboration. Great. Hey, and they go, hey, Microsoft, hey, Jaimie, is this even worthwhile? Right? So it's more than just, even in my opinion, finding the problem, but then you have to validate that problem that it's worthwhile. Any other question on that?
Yeah, so how would you define the client problem?
In what sense? If it was up to me?
Yes.
Okay. So the way I would have done it is, first off, now keep in mind, this is a very, very structured way of thinking for software and for Microsoft and our customers. I think it has to start with what is your business strategy? What are you trying to do? Right? And if we want to take this use case, maybe their business strategy is, we want to build some differentiated features in our product. Okay, what is it that you want your product to do, or what problem do you want to solve in your product that no one else is solving out there that's important enough? Now, obviously, I don't know that. I don't have market research, right? This is very MBA-like. You want to really figure out the market. You want to figure out where the gaps are. Are there problems not being addressed? And, they kind of touched on this through this iterative process saying, hey, it'd be great to have a collaboration part of a patient record, but they went about it backwards. So to answer your question directly, again, I think it starts with a business. It starts with, what's your business strategy? What are you going to do to support that? Where's your opportunity? And then figure out what a software solution looks like. Then figure out how you're going to put it in the software. So I'm not necessarily, I don't think any one person is expert at how to figure out what's important or what to do. There's just that framework. And like I said, I think it starts with strategy, market research, determining where there is a gap. And, I'm sure we can think of all these great ideas, right? Like the Netflix and the Ubers, right? Back in the day, no one ever thought about how can I watch movies on demand in my house through the internet? But Netflix came about, figured it out and said, now I can watch movies or at least have them at first delivered. Uber, right? Different way of delivering rides to people. But they didn't start with saying, hey, I want to build an app that has cars and taxis, right? They figured out, hey, there's a need for the market to say, there's a more efficient way for me to find a way to get from point A to point B and hire a ride, right? And then they also have the whole way they source ride where it's kind of crowdsourced as well. Does that answer the question well enough?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? Was this useful?
But I think we have one more question.
Yeah.
Sure.
I lost it. Sorry, never mind. Go.
He lost his question.
I lost it.
If you get back, if it comes back, you feel free to reach out to me. But again, the parting phrase I was going to make is, no one has the time to do something correctly, but everyone has the time to do it twice, right? So instead of building the solution the right way the first time of my customer, they built it, and now they're backing themselves in the corner where they have to build it a second time. So, I love that saying. So anything else from the crowd? I don't know how much more time I have.
We have time. I think we have another question.
Oh, sure.
Good evening. I have a question. When you said you collaborate with your client to understand what app to solve a problem, so how does the client identify that they have a problem? What kind of research they do? Like what research they do to understand what kind of problem they have and they want to solve for their customer or for their inbound processes?
So let me see if I heard the question. How does a customer know they have a problem, or how do they know that they want to solve a problem? Is that the question?
Yes.
Right. Well, I think, again, that's not an easy question to answer because it depends. Like if a customer, if you want to build something and grow and try to make some money and grow your company, whether it's a startup or an established company, you have to find you have to find ways to stay competitive, right? So in this case, the original goal wasn't that. It was to create differentiated features to grow revenue and to retain customers. So, or actually, I should say even better. Their goal was to grow by X number of percent and retain customers. I'd assume that in software, the only way to do that is by building more features, right? Or taking care of your customers better. It's kind of basic stuff. And a lot of software companies specifically, right? We all know that there's backlogs, a lot of software companies, right? The backlog it being the to-do list or the list of features that people are asking for. So to answer your question, sometimes you'll get those questions from your customers. Microsoft does a great job of this. We have various customer listening programs where we'll ask our customers, or our customers will tell us, it'd be great if XYZ product could do this. And I'm sure you guys are familiar with Power BI. Power BI, not only do we have that publicly, but then you can vote. So we take the most popular requested features and throw it in. So there's various ways of doing it. And again, it has to come from, hey, we really want to grow by X percent, or we want to retain customers, if there's customer attrition. Then I'm sure you could think of products that don't evolve and people are just happy continuing with those products, right? There's various ways of doing that. Again, that's more of a marketing function than a technology function. Did that answer the question well? All right. Anything else? Always happy to answer questions, happy to help the CATS community. You could find me on LinkedIn. I'm always here for the school, for the students. Let me know if I can help with anything.
All right, well then, if there are no other questions, thank you very much, Jaimie.
Sure, no, it was my pleasure.